Chaudhary is a 2014 batch Indian Administrative Service IAS officer of Gujarat category who currently serves as the Deputy Municipal Commissioner of Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. Ahmedabad is India's first heritage city, we all know. Shri Chaudhary has held several with 3 global awards for AIILSG. He is responsible for AIILSG's activities related to poverty, alleviation, equity and inclusion issues, and research and knowledge management. A Swedish Parliament roundtable was organized with him as the speaker to discuss his social innovations developed through AIILSG and their relevance for SDGs. He is invited as a visiting professor at various universities in Sweden and Germany to conduct sessions on social development and innovations. He worked closely with MOA for Poverty Alleviation Government of India and coordinated on behalf of AIILSG support to national policies for urban poverty reduction initiative. Western India region supported. Ladies and gentlemen, एक बार जोर से तालियां हो जाएं for Dr. We also have amongst us Ms. Kyungam Chung, Manager of Urban Planning Division, Seoul Metropolitan Government. She worked in Seoul Metropolitan Government for about 20 years from 2003 on urban planning, urban renovation and urban regeneration field. She participated in the Han River Park remodeling project, the New Town Development Plan, the Seoul International District Project and Jobson Sports Complex and Gongahong Square renovation project. Since 2021, she has been working a secondary at UCLGS SPAC in Jakarta. Let's give it up for Ms. Kyungam Chung. And next, I would like to call Dr. Vibhuti Sachdev, Director, United World Institute of Design, GD Goenka University. She is qualified as an architect from the School of Planning and Architecture. She undertook a PhD in architectural theory at the School of Oriental and African Studies. She used her expertise in Vastu Vidya, India's classical architectural knowledge system in hands-on conservation and design, especially at the Jal Mahal. She has experience of teaching architecture and history of art, Sussex, JNU and SSAA. Throughout her career, she has managed research projects and academic conferences. She has published 4 books and over a dozen scholarly articles. Many of her publications concern this Indian architectural theory 1998 and related knowledge systems and their expressions in architecture and art. Currently, she holds the position of Director of UID at GD Goenka University, looking after design, architecture and art programs. A very warm welcome to Dr. Vibhuti Sachdev. Next is also a lady speaker. I would like to welcome Sangeeta Bias, an alumni of the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, and National Institute of Technology, Raipur. In 23 years journey, she has worked on several heritage conservation projects at the building and urban levels. Her recent work in Mahakal Lok Ujjain is in limelight and highly appreciated. She was nominated for the US Single Country project on megacities and urban planning and awarded and the Charles Wells Scholarship. She has written books and articles on building line, including Line Manual for Conservation Work. She has actively worked for capacity building programs for heritage conservation and has trained more than 500 professionals till date. A very warm welcome to you, Ms. Sangeeta Bias. And next, I would like to call upon Ms. Sriparna Iyer. Sriparna is involved in delivery of various programs in the urban sector. She has more than 25 years of experience in the development sector, having worked with grassroots organizations, funding agencies and donors. In her 15 years career as a consultant, Sriparna has successfully delivered a range of programs funded by FCDO, the World Bank, ADB, AFD, etc. In recent years, Sriparna has been building her skills and portfolio on climate issues and has completed several assignments in the sector. Sriparna has worked extensively in almost all the states in India and internationally in Ethiopia, Bangladesh and Tajikistan. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for Sriparna Iyer. For this session, we also have Dr. Arunava Das Gupta, Professor, Department of Urban Design, School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. She is PhD as an urban designer, professor at the Department of Urban Design at the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, as well as coordinator of the Center of Urban Design Innovation in SPA. As a founder, member and president of the Institute of Urban Designers, India, Ms. Gupta has been actively promoting the idea of holistic urban design across Indian cities, while creating alternative development frameworks using community participation as a central tool for local area design. Dr. Gupta has been involved in multiple projects at an urban scale for a range of Indian cities as an advisor and consultant to various state and municipal government agencies, and is presently an expert member of the Heritage Conservation Committee for NCT Delhi and State Heritage Advisory Committee of Himachal Pradesh. He has overall 30 years through applied research projects in rural and urban Himalayan settlements and has been pursuing the larger question of the role of architects and designers beyond the city. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Das Gupta amongst us. We also have another speaker, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Shikha Jain, Director Drona. Founder and Director of Drona has an extensive portfolio on the cultural heritage of India that covers world heritage, cultural landscapes, conservation, heritage-based development. As an international expert on world heritage, she has advised government organizations in Singapore, Malaysia, UAE, Myanmar and UNESCO offices at Jakarta, Indonesia and Myanmar, and worked as a consultant to UNESCO New Delhi on several missions, including nominations and training programs on cultural landscapes. She has steered several UNESCO World Heritage listings in India. She represented India as a cultural heritage expert in the UNESCO World Heritage Committee during her India's elected term committee from 2011 to 2015 and is representing India as Bureau member on behalf of the Government of India in the forthcoming 45th World Heritage Committee session of UNESCO in September 2023. She is Vice President of ICOMOS and an expert member of the International Scientific Committee on Cultural Landscape, ICOMOS. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Shikha Jain amongst us. And now, for the keynote address, I would like to request Shri Praveen Chaudhary to please join us and convey his keynote address. Let's put our hands together, everybody.
Distinguished dais, friends, urban planners, and representatives of different cities present here, a very good afternoon to all of you. As we all know, Ahmedabad is the chair of this year's Urban 20. As city Sherpa of Ahmedabad, I would like to start with stressing on the major role that city councils can play in influencing the global development agenda, as the cities are primary engines of growth. In Urban 20 cycle, Ahmedabad city has laid out 6 key priorities for the global cities to deliberate upon. These priorities are shown on the slide. Encouraging environmentally responsible behavior, which is in line with life mission of Government of India. Ensuring water security, accelerating climate finance, championing local identity, for which we are present here. This session is on heritage preservation. I will be talking about this priority in a few minutes. Reinventing urban governance and planning frameworks, catalyzing digital urban futures. These are the 6 priorities laid out by the city of Ahmedabad for all the global cities of G20 countries to deliberate upon and come up with a roadmap and actionable items for the cities to work upon. So, starting with the history of Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad has a very rich cultural heritage. Let me explain a quick history of Ahmedabad. Before Mughal India, it was Ahmad Shahi province, which was the most significant rule in Western India. It had the trade connections with neighboring regions, far distant places via international trade routes and also with coastal transport. Ahmedabad was accessible to all the borders and routes, and that is why it was befitting location for the capital of this province. The city of Ahmedabad has evolved and expanded throughout the centuries, starting from 15th century. Its main historic settlement was developed on the eastern bank of Sabarmati River, especially at a junction where the course of river takes a slight turn, making it a safe spot for during floods and while still being connected with the water on its periphery. The town planning included north to south main roads with non-connected cul-de-sac housing neighborhoods with central open spaces. Introvert coal settlements were planned as per topography, which never faced waterlogging during rainy season, while narrowness of streets kept the area shaded during harsh sunny days. The air ventilation was mainly through courtyards in the walled city. Ahmedabad city realizing the importance of heritage, Ahmedabad city has been pioneer for its preservation efforts. Heritage of Ahmedabad is very well documented and recognized since many decades. First effort was done by Government of India way back in 1961 when all the wooden buildings were listed out. Then foundation study of walled city was carried out in 1989. Ahmedabad City Council started its first dedicated heritage cell in 1996 with whatever resources were available at that time. This cell has been growing since then, and currently there is a separate trust also, and the heritage department carries out several activities regarding heritage preservation and conservation. So these efforts throughout the past 5-6 decades resulted in Ahmedabad being inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage City list in 41st World Heritage Committee meeting held in Poland in 2017. Ahmedabad is India's first UNESCO World Heritage City. The footprint of World Heritage area has as many as 29 protected monuments, out of which 28 are Archaeological Survey of India protected monuments and one is of state government protected monument. Most of these specimens are of 15th century Indo-Islamic sandstone architecture with excellent carving and craftsmanship. City gates are also protected monuments which even now serve as landmarks of the historic city. As mentioned earlier, Ahmedabad city has started its heritage cell way back in 1996. So currently City Council has two departments per se. One heritage department which looks after the administrative works pertaining to heritage, and there is another trust formed in 2017 after being declared as World Heritage City. Ahmedabad World Heritage City Trust was formed. So a number of initiatives the Heritage Department has taken a number of initiatives and programs over the last few decades, which includes listing and grading of heritage properties, heritage restoration projects, community engagement and awareness programs, collaborative works with Archaeological Survey of India. So, after listing and grading, entire walled city has been mapped. Individual property level mapping has been carried out in the walled city with more than 2000 plus private heritage and 400 plus institutional heritage identified. It has been a mammoth step to protect under the building regulations. Government of Gujarat also supported the same by specially crafting the General Development Control Regulations (GDCR). It was redesigned for heritage walled city of Ahmedabad. City government is currently providing financial incentive in form of transferable development rights to heritage property owners to support the restoration activities proactively. City has adopted different innovative approaches. We have empaneled a number of heritage craftsmen so that in future the skilled craftsman gets working opportunities as well, and the heritage sites also get the necessary skilled inputs for preservation and conservation. Modern technologies are also being used. LiDAR, photogrammetry are being used in special cases. Community is being engaged for heritage preservation. Currently, the historic city has become a place of active exploration and unique experiments like outdoor heritage yoga. Heritage walk is very popular for tourists in the city. Cycling with heritage and in situ discourse are now a common sight in the Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad city acknowledges that multiple collaboration is required in order to ensure sustainability in heritage preservation, and hence a number of MOUs and agreements have been executed for knowledge sharing, skill upgradation and general cooperation for heritage conservation and preservation with various recognized national and international organizations, local NGOs, institutions and groups. Few of them have been listed on the side. We started providing free of cost architectural drawings to homeowners by engaging different architectural firms and institutes. Now coming back to the U20 priorities, as the current chair of Urban 20, Ahmedabad has put forth championing local identity as one of its key priorities, which is to be deliberated upon. We all understand that the key challenges being faced by the cities with regards to heritage conservation and development are rigid and regulatory planning framework, lack of planning framework for planning of urban agglomeration. We have to work together to enhance economic and socio-cultural value of local identities and heritage, to adopt local solutions to address emerging urban issues. The intersection of built heritage, cultural and creative industries and local economic development can provide substantial benefits for long-term economic resilience. Creative and cultural industries play a key role in preserving heritage and promoting local identity. Celebrating local identities can create new business opportunities and jobs, while preserving cultural networks and strengthening local communities. Thinking locally also helps leverage traditional knowledge about sustainable building design, resource conservation practices, approaches to disaster management and other challenges. The push for local will have to be made on several fronts, such as reinforcing the sense of place, facilitating local economic strengths and skills, supporting cultural and creative industries, protecting and rejuvenating historic places within cities. Some of the initiatives taken by the city has been immensely successful. Together, I hope we can chart a roadmap for our desired cities of tomorrow. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity to speak at this August forum. Thank you.
We're going to stay on the subject of history for a bit, as the session is about preserving urban heritage and strengthening local identity. And the thing is, we're given just 10 minutes each, so we'll do kind of a rapid sort of presentations by all my esteemed colleagues. And I will quickly do mine to set the tone and to sort of remind everybody how we used to build. And indeed, how we used to look after our culture and land. And can I have my presentation, please? Can I change my slides myself? Okay, so we're going to look at the classical city, the idea of Jaipur, and why classical and why Jaipur. Let me just quickly remind you that Jaipur is an 18th century city founded in 1727, and so it's not Harappa-like. It's not. It does not belong to the hoary past where we have where everything depends on imagination or reconstruction in our minds. So Jaipur is very much there. It's palpable. It's within our grasp. So that's why it makes it interesting because it's a pre-modern city, and it uses pre-modern design principles. Before the British came in and we got used to designing in plan section elevations, and the whole architectural design process changed substantially after the British came. So this is 18th century city, that's why it's important. The other important thing about Jaipur is it was designed as a single process. So you don't have to kind of unlayer it and see what the design is. So you can look at the city and it's laid out in a single design process, built over a span of 14 years fast. And the third most important aspect of it, I mean there are lots of important things about Jaipur, but I'm just going to mention three, is that it was designed as a commercial city, not a religious, not an institutional, not a kind of seaside resort. It was a commercial city designed, so it has a very contemporary ring for us, and it has a very contemporary meaning for us because we design commercial cities almost every other day, and it seems that we miss the opportunity because we're not looking at how, critically how things happened in the past. So I'm just going to quickly look at Jaipur to remind you of, so Sawai Jai Singh was the founder of the city, and this is his portrait by Sai Brahm, and he's an elderly man by now, and you can see his grey moustache and hair and elegantly dressed, and a visionary, and all the kings in Jaipur who continued after this were all visionaries in their way, and that's a topic for another session. And so this is where he was born, and this is where his ancestors were. This is Amer. And so you can see he was born and brought up in a very sheltered fort. It's a very defensive fort. And this is the time when Aurangzeb was on the throne, so the Mughal power is already waning, and he gets this renewed energy to kind of announce himself as the new leader of the region, and descends from this fort to design a city on the plains. And this is Kesar which the fort overlooks. Jal Mahal is between Amer and Jaipur, and so this is also Pleasure of Palace, as you know. But also, I mean, he stayed there while this was being constructed. Jaipur was being constructed. Govind Dev Ji is the presiding deity of Jaipur. Govind Dev, of course, some of you will know, has a fantastic history. It was discovered in Bengal, brought to Kanak Vrindavan, and then housed there for a bit, and then was brought to Jaipur as the presiding deity of the city. And this is a large, I would quite call it Pishwai, but this is a large collage of Govind Dev Ji with Radha, who joined him later, and one of the Sakhis. And he's wearing a Diwali dress. How we know he's wearing a Diwali dress? Because it's black and silver, and the dresses we wear during our festivals echo the climate and the weather. This is where Govind Dev Ji lives. This is Govind Dev Mandir. And again, I mean, another very prominent, important presence of the city is Gauri, and she lives in the Zinana, and she comes out twice a year during Navratri and takes her out of the city. It's a kind of a territorial act, as one may say, but also, festivals bind the city. They bring together all the people in the same kind of spirit of celebration, of food and fasting and feasting and all of it. So a very important festival, Gangaur and Teej, that are celebrated in Jaipur. This is one of the working plans of Jaipur, why it was getting built. This is not quite the plan that we use today to show our projects. This is a work in progress plan, and you can see the palace in the middle and the various sections of Jaipur, and you can also see Jal Mahal. Here is the Nahardar Fort and the Jaigarh Fort, and the city wall. This is a line drawing of earlier line drawing of Jaipur. Now they're at the heart of planning process. So the design was, Jaipur was planned by Vidyadhar Bhattacharya. As you know, he was not an architect, he was a planner. And he was a diva of Jai Singh. And sorry, architects, guys, but that is true. At the core of the planning system is the mandala. So mandala is not a square grid, it is a mental map. A mental map that kind of envelopes the site, takes on the features of the site, and then you decide what is the significance of the site features in relation to the mandala, and then the design sort of evolves from that mapping and takes on a 3D matrix. And actually today it is easier to appreciate how mandala works because you can it is a bit like parametric design. So you change one aspect of design and it has ramifications on the other. So nowadays softwares actually emulate what mandalas we used to work with mandalas in our minds. Now we can work with mandalas through softwares. So reconstruction of the plan of the city. So on the top left you have the site. There's a pre-existing lake. There's an Agra fort. There's a Surya temple on the right. The site is sloping towards the north. So that becomes the obvious position for the main road that connects east and west. And of course, even in Arthashastra, it's written that the road should be at the highest point of the slope so that it doesn't flood. Common sense. But that is how the site sort of starts shaping up, and you get the side of the mandala which is the distance from the road to the main road, and then you can see how it sort of takes on the site features and reveals a city map of Jaipur. And this is Jolly Bazaar, which is one of the main streets, and a lot of commercial activities were encouraged by Jai Singh, and therefore, Jaipur was conceived as a sort of a place of excellence for crafts, and it was conceived as the best place to shop in, and it continues to be so because this was a conscious strategy; it wasn't a side effect. So Jai Singh made sure that he invited the best craftsmen from the region and even from the south to settle in Jaipur. He gave tax incentives, he gave land incentives, and once they were settled and were the kids were going to school and things were, you get rooted in a place, and then he said that whatever you're producing, you're going to sell only in Jaipur, and gradually he started building the brand Jaipur, and which gave it its exclusivity and prominence as a center for excellence in craft. Okay, some more pictures of Jaipur. You can see the linearity of the streets. That's Jal Mahal, very iconic. Materials, about the color scheme, about why Gelu color was used as a material. And its relationship with the waning power of the Romans. This is Sarvatobhadra, which was the office where the Maharaja would sit with his officials for meetings. And you can see, we'll rapidly do this. Again, then there are these new additions to Jaipur that happened in the 19th century. Where there's this Mubarak Mahal. Now that's a very interesting building because it's outside of the back boundary of the palace, and because the king was very, very conscious of what the Brahmins would say about him, what the people would say about him, because you have to be sensitive to what people thought about you, and one of the criticisms was that the king is being too close to the British, drinking wine, eating beef, very bad. And so he was very conscious of that criticism. So what he did was he built a new, this is Madhu Singh, he built a new building just outside the palace. I'd call it Mubarak Mahal, exclusively for entertaining Europeans. And during independence, exchange. And also what Jaipur has is this, a palace is not just a building, it's not just where the king lives. It's also about patronage, it's also about supporting excellence of culture. And all the kings, whether it's Jai Singh, Ram Singh, Madhu Singh, they all supported excellence in literature, craft, and you see examples of that. This is wonderful painting, the Durga part as well. Beautifully detailed, and that's Ram Singh, who may be the first bespectacled king, if I'm not mistaken. This is 1850, so this is when camera was invented, spectacles were invented, and you see he's not like sitting aggressively like a king. He's sitting on a chair, 3-4 profile with a hand on his, on the table. And he was a photography enthusiast. So we were doing photography in Jaipur, at the same time when it was invented in Europe. So there was no time lag, despite the fact that there was no internet and mobile phones. So he took a lot of pictures of the Zanana, of course. And then we've got Madhu Singh, who again, very, very innovative, strategic ideas about how to connect with the West, how to travel abroad. Some examples of craftsmanship and these drawings of swords, blue pottery, you've got painted marble, and it continues to inspire modern design. And this is Doshis, Vidadhar Nagar, and there are references to Jaipur there, and also Korea's JPK, Jawahar Kendra, which also is a sort of gives a reference to the shifted square and the 9 square mandala that Jaipur uses conceptually, and this is how Jawahar Kendra's central courtyard that uses red stone. But interestingly enough, Jaipur does not use red sandstone. It uses chunam and gil in a way to look like red sandstone. Okay, I'm told I should be done. That's it. I think just to give you a glimpse of what historic cities were made of. And thank you. Now I think I will roll the program, so to speak, on that note, and I invite Ms. Kyungda Cho to talk about zero and sustainability.
Hello, my name is Kyungda Chung from South Korea. Yes, I have been working in Seoul Metropolitan Government for about 20 years, since 2003, and I'm mainly working in the urban planning and regeneration field. And now I'm working in UCLG ASPAC for 2 years as second E. And today I'd like to introduce the major urban transformation project, also historical, by Seoul Metropolitan Government. Yes, Seoul is the capital of South Korea, and the area is 605 square kilometers, and the population is about 10 million. And also many mountains and rivers and streams in Seoul. And Seoul has been the center of Korean Peninsula since ancient times. From the Joseon Dynasty in 1394 until now, Seoul has been the capital city. According to the Mori Memorial Foundation Global Power City Index in 2022, Seoul ranked 7th, and our goal is strengthening it. And in 2022, 2040 Seoul Plan, which is Urban Master Plan, was established. And according to this plan, we have strategy like restructuring urban space and walking daily area and revitalize historical things like that. So from now on, I will introduce the project of Seoul. I will first tell you about 3 projects that have been completed in the past, and then I will tell you more detail about recent 2 projects. First one is Cheonggyecheon project. Cheonggyecheon was a stream that flows through the center of Seoul, but in 1978 it was covered with an overpass to solve the traffic problem. However, as environmental issue became more important, the overpass was demolished and the ecological stream was restored. And now it is the popular attraction for Seoul citizens and people all around the world. And this is night view. And second one is Seoul Plaza, right in front of Seoul City Hall. The 13,000 square meter space was originally a roadway. However, more space needed for the people in the city center area. The roadway was removed in 2004 and green covered square was created. And Seoul Plaza is sometimes an open space, sometimes many events such as an outdoor library, and in winter season, skating rinks. Third one is Seoul 7017. The 1 kilometer long overpass across the Seoul Station Railroad was built in 1970, was used about 46,000 cars a day. However, as a result of safety tests, it was found that the overpass was old and had safety problems. So in 2017, the Seoul Metropolitan Government blocked the traffic and created a pedestrian-only road instead of demolishing the overpass. It has been created as a new place to enjoy the scenery of Seoul. And Seoul 7017 means that the vehicle overpass built in the 1970s was reborn as a human road in 2017. This is Seoul looks like now, night view. And let me introduce the detail of the last 2 projects. They are Sejongdero Forest Walking Road project and Gwanghamun Square project. The 2 projects are connected each other in location and concept. First, in Sejongdero Forest Walking Road, in order to reduce traffic in the city center area and use more public transportation and walking and bicycle, the Seoul Metropolitan Government set the city center area as a green transportation promotion zone in 2017 and planned to reduce urban traffic by 30% by 2030. In this context, we plan the project to reduce all the car lanes in the city center area from 10 lanes to 6 lanes. So the Sejongdero Forest Walking Road project is reduce lanes from Gwanghamun Square to Seoul Station in 2.5 kilometer section that creates space for buses and bicycles and people and trees. This is before and after. Less lanes and more space for pedestrians, bicycles and trees. Next one is Gwanghamun Plaza, Gwanghamun Square renovation project. This project is that I directly participated in until 2021. Gwanghamun Gate is a main gate of Gyeongbokgung Palace, has historically played a central role in Seoul. But during the Joseon Dynasty, it was a place where kings and people met, and a central space where many people visited and lined with public official buildings along this place. In particular, there was a high stage called Wondae, right in front of Gwanghamun, which is as a passage for the king enter the gate. But however, in here, a big road was built during the Japanese colonial period and become a car-centered space with 16 lanes. And also, Wondae was disappeared, and the big space for the people in front of Gwanghamun was disappeared. Then in 2009, the square was first created with 10 lanes, reduced 6 lanes, and long-shaped square in the middle of the road. But the square was not a place to relax for a long time due to the noise of the car from the both sides. And the last year, August 2022, the new square was reopened. The Seoul Metropolitan Government reduced 10 lanes to 6 lanes, and expand the square to one side so that people could come without crossing the road. Inside the square, there are 5,000 large and small trees and various amenities and heritages. This is current Hongnamun Square. Many events being held day and night, such as media facade and media wall with surrounding buildings. Next is challenges. Since the square is first built in the middle of the road in 2009, there have been many opinions that this is inconvenient to use and this square should be improved. The opinion include a lack of rest areas and necessity to revive the historical significance of Gwanghwamun Gate and necessity to improve pedestrian accessibility. On the other hand, however, there are also opinions against the project. This is the first design, complete change. This is the first design of Gwanghwamun Square renovation in Seoul Metropolitan Government. According to the first design, a complete change in Hajik Road, the direction of the east and the west. It was straight, but to be round and bend like this, and to restore a workday in front of Gwanghwamun Gate. So people concerned that traffic congestion will increase. And also, according to the first design, there were development of underground square linking the subway and all the surrounding buildings, but it requires too much budget. And some people said the bigger picture for the future is needed for this site. So first of all, the Seoul Metropolitan Government tried to reach a consensus on the need for the project and how it can improve the existing square. We held a community presentation for local residents and citizens forums, and over past 4 years, and 300 times of events were held, and 12,000 citizens participated in person. The Seoul Metropolitan Government created Gwanghwamun Citizens Committee, which consists of 50 experts and 177 stakeholders, and received feedback from beginning to end. And after 4 years of communication, finally a plan for renovation of Gwanghwamun Square was prepared. The change plan was announced to the public by the mayor. We are going to restore a workday in front of Gwanghwamun Gate, but only through a small change of road shape to minimize the traffic effect and preserve archaeological features in the square. And this is impact and feedback. Actually, a similar project has been carried out all around the world in Jakarta, New York, Paris, London, or maybe even in India. The Seoul Metropolitan Government is also trying to create a pedestrian-centered and sustainable and historical city in line with global trend. Yes, this is conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, for she's the director of Growth.
Good afternoon, everyone. What I'm going to present today is examples from 3 cities in Rajasthan where we have worked on urban heritage and management. I'll start with the first city. This is Ajmer and Pushkar. This is like twin cities. Since 4th century BC, that's what Pushkar dates from. And Ajmer, known for later the Chauhan Rajputs who created this. So this was identified under the Heritage program as one of the heritage cities to be undertaken, one amongst the 12 identified across the nation. And as part of this program, we were supposed to develop a city-level management plan, a heritage plan, and also identify 5 pilot projects which were implemented in 2014 to 2018. So you can see the heritage assets that were mapped for Ajmer, and what my point out here is it's not just the tangible heritage of this heritage of monuments, but it's also the natural heritage as well as the intangible or people's heritage, now what we are calling as living heritage. There were 5 projects that were identified in the bazaar area, the lake fronts, the Dargah Bazaar, Brahma Temple and Ghat, and the railway station precinct. This was project number 1 in Naya Bazaar. You can see the issues that were there with this project of electric wires, the traffic and other issues, and there were points identified on conserving and restoring, but also on facilities, repair of drains, parking organization and street furniture, etc. And this was finally also developed as a heritage walk area. You see the walk map out here, and the buildings were conserved in these areas, and a heritage walk was developed. In the second area, which was the lakefront, which was again in a very bad shape, and it's a very important historic area. You can see the Mughal period Baragat here that extends into the lakefront. And this, what you see was the situation on the left. People were not even allowed to access the lake, and it was in a very dirty situation. And you can see the transformed one after the Hriday project, where people were involved in developing this stretch, and it now extends from the historic Baratari into this 2-kilometer lakefront area. The third area was Dargah Bazaar, which was taken up under Hriday as well as Prasad. And the fourth area in the Brahma Temple and Lake Pushkar area, which again covered conservation of structures, temples around it, the Brahma Temple, the main street leading to Brahma Temple, upgradation of that, and the last was the railway, around the railway project. We also developed a complete toolkit looking at the various styles in the city. So there were Rajput, Mughal, Indo-Saracenic and Art Deco styles, and a heritage toolkit was prepared for signage and landscape furniture. But as a parallel project, we also looked at research in the area. So you can see the various institutions that came together to study the history of this city, and the continuity in traditions like the Chishti shrine, and how the city continues to celebrate its living heritage, the continuity that is there. There were oral recordings of people where they stay, how they use the Havelis, and a complete mapping that was done by various institutions, and also asking them how their projects would feed in and what changes could be made. So the idea was that the projects also get impacted with this inclusive stakeholders consultation. There were leader surveys carried out with institutions like Cardiff University and SPA Bhopal, and a complete website of this research work is now made available to all stakeholders, including students or researchers looking at the city. I'll move on to the next example, Udaipur, which is another city we worked in for long. And this was through the palace area. We were working for the Royal Foundation, Maharana Mewar Charitable Trust, and you can see how the 16th century space continues to be used today, even in the 21st century. This is a nodal attraction for Udaipur is a city that thrives on tourism. 40% of its economy thrives on tourism. This city palace is one nodal attraction where you see 90% of the visitors coming in. And there was a detailed study of the historic layering from 16th to 20th century, where 22 Maharanas stayed there, and each one on how they constructed. 57 palace spaces were recorded. But also there was a conservation policy established looking at the traditional techniques, including the traditional rituals. So if it's the Nagad Khana ki Chakri that was restored, at the same time the person who beats the Nagada, his family was interviewed and the street light of the Nagadchi and the Nagada was also restored. And the ritual was, reiterated. But it is a state-of-the-art museum. It has a conservation lab, currently also supported by the Smithsonian Museum, and has some excellent examples of artifacts conservation going on there. At the same time, it also continues with the royal festivals that are held in the palace, and links with the city craftspeople, which is important for its economy. You can see the craftspeople and crafts bazaar in the palace museum. And we looked at the city. This was part of a MOU between the foundation, UNESCO, Indian Heritage Cities Network, and the Municipal Corporation to develop and to look at a heritage master plan and to develop heritage walks. So we actually mapped the crafts areas and the tourism destinations, and it was realized we had an anthropologist in the team who said that if we map, and link the monuments areas where tourists usually visit to actually the cross villages which are inside the town and create a link. It will actually bring direct access to the cross people. So these walks were created and specifically to allow more access to the crafts people who were otherwise migrating out of the city. This is one example of the heritage walk. Also sharing stories of the local community. And this walk ends in this bamboo cart, which was also taken up for conservation. There are various building technologies, as you can see across on the lakefront, and this was condition mapping was done and it was completely restored as part of the Smart City initiative. There was also World Living Heritage Festival that was initiated by the royal family. It became a biennial festival to celebrate the city's living heritage and also to discuss on cases of living heritage across from various other areas. And this was presented in one of the Smart City initiatives in Barcelona. Okay, so my last city and I'm over, but this you already know the city Jaipur. So I'm just going to go through the various conservation projects that were undertaken here to revive the historic gardens. And again, it's basically inclusivity, starting heritage walks, participatory walks, talking to people, social surveys, institutions, and getting the people to comment on what changes are being made, and in doing workshops with crafts people. This is also UNESCO Creative City of Crafts and Living Heritage. As Dr. Vibhuti mentioned, this was a trade and commerce city, so the best celebration was it became a city for crafts and folk arts, like recognized by UNESCO. And again, heritage walks, giving access to the crafts people, having workshops with them. And this is a recent World Heritage site for city, a website for Jaipur created by the NGOs, Jaipur World Heritage City. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shikha, for outlining the importance of living heritage and also the process.
So my whole objective of this presentation is to establish the base for preserving the identity of the historic city. This depends upon the identifying the factors which are responsible to give it a specific character. So when we look at our cities, especially in Indian context, it is a complex equation of several factors which are jotted down in the yellow circles. And we have a very complex equation which are everything is knitted together to define a city identity, and equilibrium between all these factors are very essential if we really want to sustain our historic cities and its character. And with that, it's also important to respect the past, but also crafting for the future, because we are not stagnant at a time. We have living communities with the historic cities, and we have to look for the future also. And we need to deal with the transformations. We need to give that direction to the transformation in 21st century. Similarly, the coming generation will look over these cities and give the direction to the coming generations. So I think Vibhuti and Shikha already had discussed about the character of the cities. We have cities like Jaipur, Jaisalmer, where the cities are identified because their unique architectural characteristics, where physical forms are more important, and these are main economic generation model for the local communities, and there is a specific drive from the people inside to really conserve that for their sustainability. With that also we have cities like Gwalior and Chandni Chowk in Delhi, where I am working right now. That Rajwada, where all historic buildings are there, it is a highly commercial place. It is the center of Gwalior cities. It is also a center of the Lashkar. All the commercial activities are happening here. Some of the government buildings are there, and many other specific private buildings where, because of the high commercial values, they have been replaced by new buildings. But in the city planning, the complete traffic really goes around this circle, but no one is able to notice the architectural character. Similarly, we have Chandni Chowk in Sajinabad, a prominent history of Delhi, where cities have been transformed several times. We don't have much original buildings of 17th century, but still this space is very important to us. Everyone who is coming to Delhi would like to see the Chandni Chowk because of its living culture. The place is very important, association is very important here. So there's a different kind of equation is required when we deal such kind of spaces. Similarly, Shika has mentioned about Ajmer Dargah, where we were working as a heritage consultant for this project, which has really eye-opening experience for me. This is a three-basic case study where certain historical places are known for the cultural events, the cultural associations, where we need to really work out a different equation. If we, Dargah Sharif, the central image, I met so many pilgrims where people are really so much associated with the Khwaja Sahib. They don't even see the physical fabric, the architectural fabric. They are not much bothered about it. Their spiritual connect with the God is very important. So here's an example of Ujjain, Mahakal. I will just briefly describe the place. I will not move by the sentence. This is an ancient city where we are getting the mention of this city in several Purans and our ancient texts. It is a city of Vikramaditya. It is a city where it is a learning center where Krishna has got his education in Sandipani Ashram with his brother Balram. It is a center of astrology. It is a center of Vikramaditya Navratna, where astrology, mathematics, Ayurvedic science, everything was evolved in this city. And it is a city which was evolved in Parmara time period, which has a very prominent temple architecture, which was destroyed by invaders. The city was in dark for several times. Then it was again built up by Marathas in 17th and 18th centuries. That's how it had gained again a new glory for the coming generation. And most important, it is a venue of the Kumbh, and it is one of the Jyotirling of Shiva. So this is our Mahakal temple. The city is a city of river and water bodies, and here our natural resources and built heritage are sitting together and making a spatial ambience. But besides that, these two things are there. If people and their culture is not there, this space is not of meaning for anyone, because this space was created in Maratha time period. River is and a venue of Kumbh Mela. It is a city of temples. We have several temples. These temples were constructed in 17th and 18th century, and many of the temples were reconstructed using old material. They were assembled together to create a new city identity in certain time period. Any case, wherever digging, we are getting archaeological remains, and we see these remains in several historical buildings also there, because these material were used. So this is a cultural identity. Above that, we have a specific cultural traditions like Bhasma Aarti, we have river Aarti, we have several rituals, Deep Aarti. This is the flavor which is coming to the city. Now when this is the event which keep taking place on Ujjain, where Mahakal Savari, Panchkoshi Yatra, this is a complete year which goes through several religious festivals. This is the Kumbh, which happens once in 12 years, and millions of people visit Ujjain every year for different festivals and for this Kumbh Mela. So now when we are working for this, the huge challenge is, as a conservationist, my approach is different, but as we see from the administration purpose, there are different challenges they need to deal with, like crowd management is very important. Security, safety, infrastructure, these are very important aspects of the city. That's how the Mahakal project was initiated by Ujjain Smart City, where they have integrated all these elements together so that they can manage all the need of the city in the current generation and for coming generation. With that, it was required to strengthen the identity, architecture character, integrating knowledge, and associating several mythological events, depicting story, because nowadays people come to Mahakal, they even don't know the story about why this space is important, what kind of historical cultural values has. So we wanted to re-establish as a learning center again, and also of course whenever visitors are coming, they are getting knowledge while walking in the city. So that was the new motive, and in the same model, the upcoming project also shaping up, and also adding a new language for coming generation. Somewhere we need to make a city for tomorrow as well. So main important feature, this is the Mahakal temple, and the lane which you can see along the water body, this is Rudra Sagar. That is the main site for development of the Mahakal lok. This is a major open space that has been created. The major element of this Mahakal look was 108 Shiva's thumbs, that is depicting the 108 dance forms of Shiva, is also a amenity for security, safety, lighting, so that people can enjoy freely on this corridor. It is also a directional. It is giving direction you. It is directing you towards the Mahakal temple. This is all designed using integrating temple architecture from of the region. There is a 54 mural walls, which is depicting the stories of Shiv Parana from Srishti creation to different events of Shivji. So it is connecting and easily telling the stories of Shiv and connecting people with the relevance of Mahakal. This is the way we have established a process. I will come to the capacity building program later, how these things were created. Another form, yes. So this is the story as we created elephant panels. There are Saptrishi panels were there because there is a specific connection of the Srishti creation. There is a 100 feet long Shiv Vivaha panel. This is one of the unique Shiv Vivaha panels created. You don't find such panel anywhere. So this is the gateway which was created. This is Nandi Gate where the inauguration took place for the Ujjain Mahakal where our Honorable Prime Minister have inaugurated this Mahakal corridor. This is a site during the execution. More than 500 artisans had worked upon it, and this is a site. It has gone several transformations several times. We have corrected our own mistakes. We did because many artisans were not used to work using traditional techniques. We did a capacity building program from drawing the figures on stone and how to carve out, how to bring expressions on those stones. And this is a Panchmukhi shape which we got established on the Shiva's thumb. This is when I entered the site, and this was in a very different shape. Artisans were not aware about to draw all those things. Later on, we did the complete training program. We have done the exposure site visit for them so that they can understand the historical art forms. So this is the upper panel was craft work created by artisans before we entered as a sculptor and art work specialist for this project. And previously elephants were going towards the other side, the stone thickness was not right, the figure was not right, and then we ended with the complete program with artisans, corrected all the elephant panels, now developing towards Mahakal. So that's how our program was set. It is an example of crafting nations and crafting cities for tomorrow as well as very important in creating new identities for coming generation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kamita, for telling us that politics is not just buildings, but is made of cultural practices and a both economic activities.
Esteemed dignitaries on dais and honorable delegates, let me clarify that the earlier missing part, 4 dots, is not a typo, neither the midnight work. It's just to focus on the latter part, which could many times get missed. So we'll be basically talking about the part which has been highlighted in the brochure as well, discussing needs and aspirations of the local communities and how we enhance those local capacities. One fundamental tenet is heritage is not just a brick and mortar phenomenon. That's why it was very interesting to listen to the earlier panelists talking about living heritage. So that becomes so crucial in the entire dynamics. So it's about human beings as well. So that's going to be the focus of this. Just to give few references in support of this. So UNESCO India talks about this, inclusion, etc., etc. Then talking about participatory, people-centric approaches to the entire thing. There are also other references I won't read out verbatim. One of my most favorite conceptual framework when it comes to urban heritage or any kind of heritage is from the Global Development Research Center, Japan, whereby it talks about a very multi-dimensional phenomenon. It takes a four-dimensional look, if I may say, two dimensions plot along the time scale, long term and short term, and two facets are vis-a-vis the city and the other is about people. The red boxes are something to be more focused on. So basically, I'll be focusing on two dimensions of expanded horizons. The first dimension talks about the understanding vis-a-vis inclusion and people. This overall subject of heritage. So poverty reduction very crucial in this framework by Global Development Research Center talks about heritage conservation and overall heritage discourse as a medium also for poverty reduction and also for community well-being, community participation. A bit off track, but community well-being today being the World Health Day, 7th April, becomes so crucial for all of us and can be a very good medium. There are many heritage structures within slums in Mumbai. Very different kind of structures, and unless we have participation and other quality of life parameters taken into consideration for the local people, the overall heritage conservation will be absolutely a challenge. So basically key focus for this very quick narration will be on the inclusion part of it, poverty reduction, with focus on the underprivileged populations, community participation, resilience and innovations. Let me emphasize that instead of having this as a theoretical discourse, I like to borrow from AIILSG's own field actions and innovations. Very diverse kind of field actions AIILSG has with urban populations, urban poor, rural poor, tribal poor, and there is a second expanded horizon I will be soon talking about, that there can be a cross-sectoral learning as well, so that we can also borrow from the learnings from the other sectors and other domains, spatial domains too. The overall endeavor of AIILSG is holistic, but it has very direct implication as well to the subject under consideration. I'll quickly skip this to save on time. The second expanded horizon is about my understanding of urban heritage. One aspect of it is very rapid urbanization in India and many parts of the world, but simultaneously it is getting a component with a phenomenon whereby a very unique trend is being seen vis-a-vis small towns, medium towns, and those are going to have their very niche kind of place in the overall heritage dialogue as well. The other related, organically related aspect is current rural areas will be maybe a decade down the line, will be the small towns or even medium towns. So very different kind of futuristic perspective has to be seen for the dialogue. So the case for cross-sectoral learning that we have. Some of the fundamental questions that we ask ourselves in this regard is the inclusion perspective accepted within the city discussions and decision making when it comes to urban heritage? Are the underprivileged identified? Because if then we accept the inclusion perspective, and inclusion has been a key theme, a key fundamental tenet of India's 5-year plans. So if we accept this as a very crucial fundamental tenet, then do we have those tools and mechanisms in place to internalize this? So there has to be a way of symbiosis between urban heritage and the concerns of the disadvantaged populations. There are very pioneering efforts from AIILSG on this front. In the initial stages around 12 years back, when urban poverty was getting a very key focus in India, AIILSG developed those initial poverty profiles, etc. What we see is there is such a close relation between developing these kind of profiles to piggyback on the heritage discussion as well, so that it can symbiotically benefit both. Then, do I really understand the local potential and what can be done? And then appreciating those local capacities becomes very important. Also discussing local needs and aspirations. So, talking about community participation, do we have those participatory mechanisms in place with respect to the urban heritage conservation as well, whereby we take participation all the stakeholders, because otherwise that won't be that efficient and effective as well. In this regard, AIILSG's other innovation, community self-assessment and planning. Again, it's not a theoretical proposition. It's about how we involve community in a very structured way in the entire dynamics, which is felicitated to global recognition. But I'll quickly wrap up with last 2 points that this inclusion per se won't happen automatically. There have to be conscious efforts. For example, very specific skills need to be given to the disadvantaged population within any history of these kind of endeavors, leave aside for urban heritage for any subject, and thereby those two innovations of AIILSG really are very crucial. One is with respect to life skills, but very keen emphasis on the financial literacy. And these have been recently launched at the hands of Honorable Director General of AIILSG, Dr. Ganga Patel, in our field action area. But very importantly, with the participation of the local communities. With this, I conclude this very quick narration by saying that all these dialogues probably are more effective when we start right from that age of childhood. And that's why that becomes a very keen emphasis for us that even this urban heritage dialogue and the inclusion perspective can start from very early. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dinesh. To also remind us the importance of connecting heritage with the grassroots. She will shed light on consideration of heritage infrastructure and planning at the policy level.
Thank you, and good afternoon. To start with, I'm not an architect. I'm not a conservationist, but yes, I do and have been working in the urban space for a long time now. So I was a little bit surprised when I had to speak on something like this. So I decided that, let's look at some of the cities where interesting work is happening, heritage cities, old cities where interesting work is happening, and from the perspective of urban planning, from the perspective of climate resilience, and there are learnings and lessons which are coming there, which I'm sure can be replicated in other cities. So, India, of course, everybody knows it is one of the oldest civilizations. There are lots and lots of heritage and historical sites and old cities, but they are all facing these challenges of unplanned urbanization, climate change, and cultural change. So now, when we talk about urbanization and planning, when we look at our cities and the way that they are planned, unfortunately, none of our plans talk to each other. So we have a heritage plan, we have a city development plan, we have a master plan, and nobody talks to each other. So it's like, and you really cannot continue to be doing that because your cities are growing and your heritage areas are increasingly in the old part of the city. They are like places where you cannot. There is problems of space, so you can't really go and start from scratch in those areas. So, as part of the work that we do as in IBE, we felt that the Smart City Mission provides a fantastic platform to be able to demonstrate in a little bit how it is possible to make all of these plans talk to each other and how you can really develop some of your heritage areas and put them to use. For example, in Gwalior, where we work on the Smart City Mission, we developed this entire walkway around the Bada area in the Gwalior Smart City area. I won't talk about Mahakal because Sangeeta has already spoken a lot about Mahakal. But simple things like just doing a facade redevelopment or a facade unification can be enough to bring that momentum that is required for the city to improve its livability. Now, infrastructure, of course, is a huge problem, and here I'd like to just talk about Puri. What have they done? Puri, as we all know, Jagannath Temple, small city, only 2.5 lakh residents, but huge amounts of tourists who come every day and generate a lot of plastic waste in the form of water bottles. So what Puri did was they converted the entire city to have drink from tap, the only city in our country where you have drinking water from the tap, and as a result, the plastic waste that is generated from the bottles has significantly gone down. Another very interesting thing that Puri did was they created these self-help groups of women from slums. They trained them to be the water meter readers. So they all have these point of sale machines and they go and collect the, your water bills, and there is an incentive link. So there is a base salary that they get and the rest of it is all an incentive. So it is in their interest to make sure that they collect more. So this is all money which goes into the municipal budget, and so your revenues increase. Another very interesting project that we looked at was, Lingaraj Temple, Bhubaneswar. Again, right in the, center of the city, where you have the municipal corporation building next to it, you have the hospital, you have the court, extremely congested. But there was a vision to convert this into a low emission zone. So what we did was, we worked with the city to actually come up with a plan which focused on how can you control the climate impacts, because traffic and dust were the two big things here, which were of course affecting the temple as well. And so these are workable solutions which are easy to implement and they don't cost too much money. But again, this is how integrating this heritage area into the larger city. Now, just another area that I wanted to talk about was how can you convert a liability into an asset. So you spend a lot of money and you do a lot of heritage, conservation, and then you expect that, okay, only tourists are going to come and, I'm going to get my money back. But can you also continue to use those structures? So what we did was, again, in Gwalior, as part of the smart city, the Moti Mahal was redeveloped. So now the Moti Mahal is, houses the integrated command and control center of the smart city. So it is used every day, and because it is used every day, it is well maintained. Part of it has been converted into a digital museum and a planetarium. So again, it is used. It sort of pays a little bit for its upkeep, but because you have the government using it every day, the maintenance is better. One big thing about fund is, where are you going to find the money to do all of this conservation and heritage? So again, example, Mahakal. Sorry, I'm not talking about the heritage part of it, but Mahakal is a good example of funding from different sources. So these were all the sources of funds that were pooled together to actually develop this whole area. And we all know what has happened. Similarly, in for the government of Uttarakhand, we had done this tourism infrastructure development project, where again there was pooling of funds from multiple sources. So a little bit of innovation in how you can get money from different sources, of course backed by a vision, can go a long way to improving your heritage. Everybody's been talking about the living heritage and the livelihoods, so I won't go into all these details, but just give you an example of one project where, again, we were working in Himachal Pradesh. It was an ADB funded project which was hardcore tourism infrastructure. So what we did was we actually trained the women over there to make these pine needle handicraft. We then helped prepare business plans, marketing platform. There could be need for alternate skills, So why must it always be that you are looking at small bits of, improvements in livelihoods? So can we sort of look at it at a scale? Natural heritage, everybody's talked about, and here just one example of the work that we are doing currently with Srinagar Municipal Corporation, where the Doodh Ganga trail, which Doodh Ganga has actually now become a trail, but it's a river which passes through the center of Srinagar, and it also has a connection to the Jhelum River. So now this entire rejuvenation of that water body, of that river, and which we believe, much like the example from Seoul, which is really going to bring about a sea change in the city. So just to conclude, there are just a couple of other things that, I mean, the three key things that I think we should be conscious of is that heritage, is part of your city. You cannot look at urbanization, you cannot stop it, and neither can you sort of look at just your heritage in isolation. As a nation, we have fantastic rules and regulations, but I think, people, perhaps the how of doing it is important. Of course, everybody's talked about capacity building and cross-learning. So if this could happen across cities, lots of cities come up with frameworks and guidelines which could be easily adapted for our cities. And also not to forget that natural heritage and living heritage are very much to be considered, and it's not just the building heritage. So that's all that I have to say. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Session just after lunch and all the tables are full and everybody's awake. Now that's a real boon for the speaker. So I'll try and see how briefly I can say what I have to say. But very importantly, like the previous speaker said, I am not a conservationist, but I am an architect. So I will be speaking about architecture. I am also an urban designer, therefore I will be speaking about cities, and I will hope to see that cities in India are urban designed as well as conserved to create what you have just seen on the screen, preserving urban heritage and strengthening local identity. The two operative terms here are about urban heritage and about local identity. These are terms which are unanimous and equivalent to many professions, and it includes the professions of architecture and urban design. That's why it is possible for me to connect with the topic and see whether, as a discipline, we have some role to play or not. I have been an urban designer all through in the Department of Urban Design in SPA. This department was bifurcated into two departments. One department was called Conservation, at that time Urban Conservation, and now the Department of Architectural Conservation and Urban Design. And that's why my second slide is actually about differentiating that particular term or terminology. This is not an architectural conservation based topic, this is an urban conservation based topic, and that in this case, local identity is not about local craft, individual identities through local craft, but it is about urban artifacts. And that's why there is a difference in scale. And this difference in scale also has a difference in methodology. And that is why I think it is important for us to know where are we standing here. Are we actually looking at architectural conservation and therefore local identities, or we are looking at urban conservation and strengthening local identity through urban artifacts? So that's a query. There's something that I leave it to you to ascertain. But I see policy after policy, mission after mission, that we have not really clarified this term, and even in the field of academia, also in institutions, we have not really discussed the question of scale. So there are cities of all kinds and spaces within cities of all kinds, and I have to make this clear to all of us that unless and until we look at urban heritage closely and critically, we will probably in all our cities in the country, most of the cities in the country, convert our historic cities into Mayurvihars, right? Not that Mayurvihar is a problem. It is a question, right? Our cities in the country, this country, is about heritage and history too, and not just about apartments and places like apartments. So I am worried about the fact that tomorrow Shahjahanabad can become a Mayurvihar. All Havelis of Shahjahanabad
can become apartments. All gullies and mohallas of Shahjahanabad in Delhi can also become Mayur Vihar roads. And all parks that we used to think about with respect to plazas and courtyards and many things that we talk about will become narrow strips of green. Now that is what we are reducing our cities to. And I feel that that is where we play a role in the academia as well as in the profession. And this is the role that we need to look forward to us. Who creates the cities? And what do we do to make sure that these cities are also being created by us? So we go back to the maps of the past, like we saw all through the afternoon. And in those maps of the past, we find out various kinds of considerations. And some of these considerations are actually about mobility, or about where people gather, or how people actually move around in their everyday life, or even talk and discuss things. That is what we talk about in terms of culture. But these kinds of maps are important for us because it also means that it records transformation. It tells us about change. And that is why I think it's important for us to understand that change is not necessarily neutral. Change can also be benevolent. It is usually benevolent and hopefully so, but it can be also very, very harmful. Mapping helps us in recording change. And that is why I am also so interested in this kind of a map. In fact, our previous speakers and their projects were very revealing because these are projects of today. But these were also projects 3 decades back when I entered the profession of urbanism. Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation and the biggest heritage city of the world, or in India at least, for the longest, right, had a very dynamic person called Debashish Nayak, who came to Delhi and started this entire idea of conservation in Delhi too. Debashish Nayak went to Ahmedabad, and in Ahmedabad he set up the cell in the municipal corporation, which today has become world famous. So it's not just Debashish Nayak in Ahmedabad, but we also look at Mahakal Lake Nakum in Ujjain, and I go back to my thesis, which was about 30 years back, which I had taken on Mahakal. And I was trying to understand what did Rudra now do today. Right? 3 decades back, Rudra was green. 3 decades later, Rudra is still green, but where is the Sagar in Rudra? These are all questions that we have in our minds, but I hope that these questions will keep recurring. We are also doing things in Rajasthan, in all the 4 heritage, so-called heritage cities, which are also tourist cities. One of them is not heritage, and that heritage city today is called Kota. And we have taken up Kota because simply Kota is today very strongly a matter of India and not just about tourists who come to India. And that is the reason why Kota becomes part of us. Ask any youth and they'll tell you how valuable Kota is for them. These are the things that I think the academia should also focus on. We also look at bylaws and we see how the master plan of Delhi has actually not done its job. Right? And that is what I think we keep on looking after. From places to places, we find out that the citizens of the city are the biggest sufferers. Maps tell us about history, maps also tell us about today. And what was a garden at one point of time, belonging to a Mughal Begum, is today everybody's space. And that space is not even recognized or understood by the citizens of the same city whom we call and invite to give speeches to us. These are all issues that we need to look at. Heritage is not about monuments only. Heritage is also about the everyday qualities that we have. And these everyday qualities is mapped by us, programmed into our understanding of an old city, put into the question of a fabric, and within the fabric, we understand through color coding what kind of markets might used to be there. And in the markets, what would be the processes and flows of goods that would be used from all old cities. Then we look at projects. Projects come much later. And sometimes projects overtake us because we feel that projects have to be done in a certain way. Builders, politicians, others who invest do not look at them in a certain way. So Havelis in Shahjahanabad are becoming old, becoming places of gathering. And these places of gathering are also becoming, golden Havelis or Dharampura Haveli, because we want to do adaptive use of Havelis. Now that is why we feel that the streets of Shahjahanabad, well documented at one point of time, given scale to itself, will tell us a little more in terms of the story of change, which is also a transformation. And that story of change and transformation can then talk to us about continuities. If we change the plinth of Shahjahanabad, we change this, which means that we change the idea that public can sit, right? And if the public can't sit next to a street, where will they sit? That's why they go to parks and then they find that there are no benches in parks. They can't sit. So you keep looking at ideas and see how ideas can be repeated. In our history today, good ideas are never repeated, right? They are always left as good ideas because somebody has to preserve them. And that is why I think we need to do all this. Chuttan Haveli is a very important case to us. It's 3 decades old in terms of documentation. But the Haveli is what we know today as Dharampura Haveli. 2 decades from now, students will only know about Dharampura Haveli. They will not know about this documentation. They will not know what it was in the past. But if you look at the ornamentation next to the staircase of Chuttan Haveli, and then look at the people who are guarding the Haveli today, you will realize Shahjahanabad is changing. Both there, as well as in terms of the Golden Haveli, or any other Haveli that we talk about. Shahjahanabad has got many, many assets. Its streets have become a factor of its architecture, but we have not chosen to keep its architecture alive. We have allowed it to grow and become something else. And finally, we realize we are at the crossroads. Thank you.
Have the felicitation. Let's put our hands together for our speakers and panelists. Now, first, I'd like to can I request our DDG, Mr. Ravi Ranjan, to please come forward, join us, and felicitate Mr. Praveen Chaudhary, IAS U20 Sherpa. I would now like to call upon Arjun Singh to felicitate Dr. Professor Vibhuti Sachdev, who was the moderator for this session. Let's have Indrani Priyadarshini to felicitate Ms. Kyunga Chung. Also Mr. Mukul Sharma to come forward and felicitate Dr. Shikha. Mr. Pushpender Singh to felicitate Ms. Sangeeta Baez. Mr. Arad Gupta. Mr. Prashant. Mr. Sanjay Sharma to come forward and felicitate Dr. Raghunath Das Gupta. Let's give a hand together, everybody. I'll request our panelists to moderate.